Hello everyone, this is Timothy Mark with Alexandria.
How's everybody doing today?
So today we're going to talk about the GoatMan. So we are World Paranormal Research Society. Our website is worldparanormalresearchsociety.org. Our Gmail, our email account, if you want to contact us in any way, shape, or form, it's worldparanormalresearchsociety@gmail.com. The YouTube channel is World Paranormal Research Society. So I'm Timothy Mark, that's Alexandria, and we're World Paranormal Research Society. So today we're going to talk about the GoatMan. And you know, you got a story about your toe that you want to tell when you ripped off your toenail this morning?
Yeah, actually I had a pretty rough start today. I was trying to make our bed and cook pancakes at the same time, but for whatever reason, when I was putting the sheet on, my big toe nail actually snagged on part of the mattress and didn't realize that I was actually bleeding profusely from my toe, and my toenail now is just hanging on by a thread. And what a very bloody, awful experience this morning, having to deal with a big toenail that was actually bleeding all over the place when trying to cook flapjacks at the same time. But got it all wrapped up in gauze, so hopefully that'll be the end. It's pretty sore, and I had to wrap it up like a mummy, but that was sort of the rough start to my day, and I hope it gets better than having a big toe that's swollen all the heck to it. So
and I was actually on the phone with a VA, and I'm sitting on the couch on the phone with a VA, and she comes walking in with blood just coming all out of her toe, and I'm like, whoa. And I couldn't acknowledge that on the phone because I'm sitting there having a serious conversation with the VA, and she's bleeding out her toenail, almost ripped off her toenail, which I think it probably will fall off at some point.
Yeah, it's half on. I mean, I just didn't have enough courage or enough guts this morning to actually take it off myself. So just cleaned it up really good and hope for the best. And like I said, you know, it's just a day in the life. We've always got excitement going on, whether it be blood, gore, toenails, or whatever. But investigations, we've always got something on the go. So, I mean, it can only get better than that. And like I said, you know, it's got to be a better day for sure. And then another thing too is that hopefully this weekend we will be having a very exciting guest joining us. I'm not going to mention the guest on a podcast this weekend, but really, really looking forward to bringing this show to all of you out there. So it's going to be a very good podcast.
So yeah, she's actually a pretty popular medium, and she does a lot of things in the public eye, and so yeah, it's going to be, you don't want to miss Sunday's show for sure. It's going to be really interesting. So, talking about the GoatMan, again, we're a World Paranormal Research Society. That's the name of the organization that we work for. And we are the only research team to ever catch the GoatMan on video. The GoatMan actually manifested himself in room 118. If in the video is actually on YouTube, if you go to YouTube and type in room 118 by World Paranormal Research Society, you'll see the video and you'll see the GoatMan. The GoatMan, there's been a lot of myths and stories and speculation and horse shit written about him, but you know, let's cut through the horse shit and say that we're the only people to ever catch him, not just on video, but there's no photographic image of him either, except for what we have.
And we did ask this particular entity what its name was, and all I could gather from this entity was Mr. M. I don't know what Mr. M means, but that's the only way that this entity would identify itself when we did ask what the name was. So this was in a room that a woman had committed suicide. I think less than 24 hours they had taken her body out. So a very eerie room in which a lot, you know, her personal belongings were still in the room when we were doing the investigation. So a lot of residual energy, but it was very negative and very evil energy at the very same time as well in room 118.
Yeah, we had actually met them, not really met her, but we walked past her. So
just prior to her killing herself.
Prior
she was sitting in a lawn chair.
Yeah, the same day that she killed herself. So she, we were actually doing a paranormal investigation at that motel in room 120 where some tragic events had happened. And as we were in the room, if you remember, there was a heavy HEB bag. HEB, for those of you who don't know, is a grocery store here in Texas. There was a very heavy bag there that had been sitting there for a while, and at the moment she committed suicide, that bag flew off the nightstand. And it was the very next day that they had asked us to go into her room and do her room.
And for me, I remember Timothy telling me, like, how horrific, you know, I wouldn't want this to happen to anybody, but to have your body being loaded in the back of a pickup truck to be taken away. I mean, how uncaring and how feeling, just like you're a piece of meat being loaded into the back of a pickup truck and taken away.
I heard some people moving around early that morning, the next morning, and I looked out the window and they were literally throwing her body into the back of a pickup truck. So yeah,
I mean, to me, the visualization of that in itself is just kind of really uncaring, unfeeling. But I mean, as you know, I'm a historian, so I like to bring a lot of historical references in regards to civilization, religion, if I can, to a lot of the topics that we bring forward. And the GoatMan, really, I think it has beginnings in the beginning of time.
And I would like to say this: there's a lot of historical references out there on the internet that's complete bullshit. So always reference who wrote the story, what website are you on, and what is the webmaster's agenda to putting something, even if it's biblical, putting something on a website. Just because you read something on a website, it does not mean it's true. You want more than one reference point to validate it. With us, we have video evidence, and we use more than, sometimes we use up to 4 or 5 reference points to validate things, and other than that, then we can't really claim it to be true. So we definitely research a lot of our stuff. But when it comes to anything with a biblical reference, there's no better reference than the Bible. You don't want to go to TomDickAndHarry.com and see that they're twisting the word of God and state that as a fact. I'm a biblical researcher. And I'm very passionate about the Bible, and I will not put up anything about the Bible that has not been validated or true. So with that being said, we're going to go into the GoatMan. Again, if you go to our YouTube videos channel, World Paranormal Research Society, and scroll down the videos, you'll see a video titled Room 118. That's where the GoatMan manifests himself to us. After that, Alexandria did a lot of research on the GoatMan and decided to write a book on him. And let's go ahead and kick it off.
And, you know, we start in ancient times. I'm sort of going to give you a brief tutorial on ancient times, different civilizations. In ancient Greek mythology, we all know of Pan, the myth of Pan. The other names of the GoatMan is Faun, Satire, in Scottish English history. So really, to really cut it down to size for all of you for a better understanding, the GoatMan, or a mythology of GoatMan or Goatwoman-like figures, have been around since the very beginning of time, and their characteristics really do vary. It is in the majority of cases that the top portion of the body above the waist is either a male or a female, and it's always the hind quarters that is the GoatMan, and a lot of times it may be just goat tail and goat legs, and sometimes it's just a goat tail and goat ears. But if we all know the legends of Pan with his whistle in Greek mythology, the ancient Romans had GoatMan-like figures. So really, since the beginning of time, he has evolved into a thing of legend, and he has become a mythical creature. And at that particular time, he was not saying he was good or evil or bad or anything like that. But really, what comes to mind for me, it really begins into the Knights Templars time, and the name of Bahamut that really kind of brings it into the forefront, and how history really makes it into a bad thing when it's not a bad thing. And as we know, every legend or every myth always begins with a grain of truth, and it becomes manipulated through time. It becomes manipulated as the story is told from person to person, and they add their own spice to the story.
Well, let's talk about Bahamut. Bahamut, like you said, was never did not start out to be a bad thing. It later in the 1800s was turned into a bad thing. Let's talk about the pentagram, which was associated with Bahamut. People see the pentagram on Bahamut and they say, oh, that's a satanic thing. But the pentagram in the time of King Solomon was actually one of the king's seals. King Solomon used the Star of David, and he used the pentagram, because the pentagram originally stood for the 5 senses that God gave you. It was never a bad thing originally. And then after Christ was crucified on the cross, the pentagram stood for Christians. The pentagram stood for the 5 wounds of Christ. So knowing that, in the late 1800s it was turned into a bad thing, but if you look at the history of it, it was never bad. It was just one of the Christian symbols and Judeo symbols that's been taken from us.
And another name for Bahamut as well as the goat of Mendes as well. And as well, the original goat pentagram first appeared in the book La Clef de la Magie Noire by the French occultist in 1897, and this symbol would later become synonymous with Bahamut and is commonly now referred to as the Sabbatic goat. And Samael is a figure in Talmudic lore, and Lilith is a female demon in Jewish mythology. And really, Bahamut is a term originally used to describe an idol or other deity that the Knights Templar were only accused of worshipping, and that subsequently was incorporated into disparate occult and mystical traditions. And Bahamut really appears as a term for a pagan idol in the actual trial transcripts of the Inquisition of the Knights Templar in the early 14th century. And then it first became more popular in the English usage in the 19th century during debates and other wild speculations on the reasons for the suppression of the Templars. And then really, since 1856, the name Bahamut has been associated with the Sabbatic goat image by Levi. And that's what he brought into the forefront in regards to Bahamut representing heretical tradition that should result in a perfect social order. So really, and then another time frame is the name Bahamut appeared in July 1098 in a letter by a crusader by the name of Ribmount. And this is what he said in his letter, and I quote, "As the next day dawned, they called loudly upon Bahamut, and we prayed silently in our hearts to God. Then we attacked and forced all of them outside the city walls." Very important to make note that the Templars believed in God, that they were soldiers for God, and they also prayed to God prior to every single battle.
And again, Bahamut was never a satanic thing. It was later in the late 1800s turned into a satanic thing. And the pentagram, which is now widely associated with Satanism, was never a satanic thing. It was actually a Jewish thing that stood for the 5 senses God gave you, and then after the crucifixion of Christ, stood for the 5 wounds of Christ. So it was just a symbol. These are symbols that were taken from us.
So ancient religions really had all kinds of mythological goat-like figures, and it was really when King Philip IV of France on Friday the 13th, 1307, really had all these Knights Templars simultaneously arrested and tortured into their confession. So he really used the aspect of Bahamut and saying that they worshipped this idol of Bahamut as a god and their savior, and that's and they said that the word Bahamut came out in several confessions, and I really think that this was a false confession, and they even said at one time that they even had a severed head of Bahamut. So really that gives you a timeline through history.
It was definitely a false confession. If you go back and listen to our podcast on the Knights Templar, we give you the reasons for that. The reasons was the king owed money to the Templars.
That's right. So, I mean, he had to speak to the Pope, so he didn't want to repay that debt. So what better way to get rid of the Knights Templar than to accuse them of worshiping a false idol called Bahamut and permitting, you know, in their rituals and all this archaic stuff. And I mean, Freemasonry is in my family, and I can completely tell you with certainty there is no ritual or any kind of ceremony that pays homage to Bahamut at all. And then we're going to jump now to the modern times, and really the GoatMan.
Well, you know, because you're in the female version, you're in the Eastern Star, right?
I'm a member of the Order of the Eastern Star. It is a Freemason.
I would find it hard to believe that in the male side of the Masons, that Bahamut is not used in some ritualistic form as a holy thing, not a satanic thing, but a holy thing.
I can't answer for that because I'm not privy to, you know, being in a Freemason lodge and being privy to their ceremonies or not. I can't answer that.
I had a roommate one time that was a 32nd degree Mason, and he'd been a Mason for, God, I guess probably close to 30 years. And I'd find it hard to believe that Bahamut was never used.
Why would you say that they would have to use Bahamut?
Because the Knights Templar used it.
No, they were accused of using him in
rituals. Actually, if you research the Knights Templar, which we did,
and it made reference to his name,
Bahamut.
Right.
But they did use the pentagram.
Right, because they were followers of the King Solomon's temple, and they believed highly in King Solomon. So, you know, now it seems like we're stemming into more modern times in America, where really the GoatMan has really become a creature of. He's actually an urban legend, a creature of legend, and actually this is one theology behind the GoatMan, that he's an axe-wielding, half-animal, half-man creature that actually it is said, and I mentioned this in my book, that a scientist who was working at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, that he was doing these experiments for the U.S. government, and this was the spawn of the research. He became a GoatMan, where he became attacking cars with axes and roaming the back roads of Beltsville, Maryland.
That's where you have the scientific experiments of cross species. But Bahamut was something that existed all the way back to ancient Egypt. And, well, the GoatMan, all the way back to ancient Egypt. And we are the only team to catch it on video, photography, anything. We're the only team. And if you Google the GoatMan, you will only see it in drawings. You'll hear about it. But if you go to room 118, we put it up there for you for free. See it.
And, you know, as a history buff and a historian, I just, you know, I try and find various stories or various myths, and there's actually one. His name is Charles McCartney, and he's actually called the GoatMan, and he was born in 1901 and died in 1998. And actually, he is a traveling preacher, and he was a significant folk and religious figure in Georgia for more than 4 decades. And he was actually a likely influence on the works of the writer Flannery O'Connor. He traveled around the United States in an iron-wheeled caravan of between 12 and 30 goats, and was known as the GoatMan. So this is a folk hero in Georgia. going back and forth, he was considered the GoatMan. So that's another legend of the GoatMan. Then we go into, there's so many different things written about the GoatMan, specifically in America. Now, we caught a lot of people that we spoke with in Texas that had their own particular stories on the GoatMan. And
I'll tell you, one of them is a club where, it's in Austin, Texas. It's a club where the Hispanic community swears up and down the GoatMan used to come in there and dance.
Really? And then, of course, it says the GoatMan is known to be roaming the United States. He looks for lost hikers and unsuspecting teens as snacks. And the urban legend, first reportedly seen in 1957, has allegedly been seen in 3 states recently: Texas, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. So that's very, very fascinating. And again, they always make reference to that scientist in Beltsville, Maryland, for bringing that forefront. And then the GoatMan really has a pretty bad rap sheet when it comes to having various human encounters. And there was actually a sighting in 1962 that ended up with 14 hikers mysteriously dead. And the police never reported what caused the strange circumstances of their death. That was actually in Lover's Lane. I believe that's still in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then the creature again was spotted by multiple eyewitnesses all over the country: Texas, Wisconsin, Kentucky.
All these people that spotted him never thought to take a picture of him. Again, we're the only people with the video evidence that this man exists. Go to Room 118 YouTube channel, World Paranormal Research Society, and view it.
But, you know, we have to really kind of dissect this. I mean, a lot of people have made reference to, you know, the GoatMan, flesh or folklore. What is he? He's just a mythical being. And I think that really brings to the forefront, I mean, these encounters with the GoatMan. He's
not a mythical being. What you're saying is what the people
claim him to be.
A mythical being. We proved him to be
that
real.
He's real. And, you know, people that have various encounters all say the same things, that he seems to be like a hybrid human goat. And very large and small in times. And sometimes he is said to be cruel to dogs. And more times than others, they are sometimes associated with bridges. And we've said a lot of people had various encounters seeing him. There's a GoatMan bridge as well, and they say that he has a...
And then in Denton, Texas?
Yes, Denton, Texas, there's a... where the GoatMan is seen on the bridge, actually described as a very musky smell. And sometimes these beings are being described as being sad. Very sad and frightening. And it just, America has a very long occurrence of having encounters with the GoatMan, and I think it's very, very, you know, fascinating to see all these people that have seen the same creature. And I mean, since I had that encounter with the GoatMan in room 118, it's really changed my perspective on the various creatures that are out there. And it just makes you wonder that there's more out there than the unseen eye. And he's actually, they've seen him in actually Louisiana. Some people have described him as 7 feet tall. Of course, the version that we've seen is not the same as 7 feet tall.
Let me just put it this way. If you do the alphabet, you said he refers as Mr. M. Ain't M the 13th letter of the alphabet?
Yes, it is. And, of course, he's not as famous as his cryptid cousins like the Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster, because he's not written about as much as they have been. But, I mean, he has his own devout falling. I mean, he really does.
We're going all over the place with this. What I would like to say is Alexandria wrote the book, The GoatMan, and she gives you a lot of different takes on the GoatMan and people's beliefs. I know the GoatMan to be a demonic entity from room 118.
From our encounter with him.
He's not Bigfoot. He's not the abominable snowman. He's not the Loch Ness Monster. He's a demon that we've actually caught on film, that we've encountered that's caused a lot of tragedy in our life.
And I'm saying that he's a cryptid creature, this on the same lines as Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. He's a creature, but there's not that much has been written about him as those particular entities. And in Kentucky, for an example, the Pope Lick Monster is a legendary part man, part goat, and now a part sheep creature that is reported to live beneath the Norfolk Southern Railroad trestle near Floyd's Fork Creek. And there's been a lot of occurrences with him and as well. So I mean, that's another occurrence with that particular person there. And they're saying historically the first sighting of a GoatMan entity, and this is at 520 BCE in ancient Greece. So sightings of these GoatMan creatures have been really around since the beginning of time. And we actually came across a few people after we had written the book, or after our encounter in room 118, that said they had their own GoatMan experiences. So I don't really know how true that is, but I mean, we like to bring that to the forefront.
One of the things that we notice about people in Texas, a lot of people in Texas, if you say, I seen a turd fall from the sky, must have been an angel's turd, they'll say they seen the same thing.
Well, the most famous GoatMan creature sighting in Texas is the Lake Worth Monster, and just outside Fort Worth, Texas. And he's been reports of sightings by local citizens have been as far back as 1969, July 1969, that there was a belief that a mysterious creature lived in Lake Worth, Texas, and there was actually a newspaper reporter on that same thing, and I did mention that in my book as well in regards to that creature. And there's the annual Lake Worth Monster Bash that is held in October, beginning on the 40th anniversary of the 1969 reports. So there's an actual festival that takes place in Texas that remembers the 40th anniversary of that particular sighting.
I'll tell you this, we and throughout our investigations, and we've done a lot of them, we've encountered a lot of demonic entities, and man, it will destroy your life if you're not careful with it. So you got to really know what you're doing when you encounter these things.
I mean, it all comes down to what we've said before, is that when you go into any investigation or any work of spirit, you really have to be prepared, and there's a lot of preparation. You're just not going to run in there with the eyes wide open and think that you're going to, get all this equipment going and you're going to just get it done. If you don't prepare yourself by grounding, meditation, smudging, what have you, you're really opening the door for a lot of evil entities and deities that can come and just play havoc in your everyday life. And literally, there are people that actually can die from it. And I think it's just, very, very important for you to be aware.
I can tell you this, I didn't have any health issues before I started encountering demons. If you go back to the research, all the way back to even what Ed Warren used to do, one of the organs that's affected when you encounter a demon is your gallbladder. I am now at the verge of having to have my gallbladder removed.
I mean, and that's just how dangerous the situation can be. And I mean, we have encountered so many different things along with our various investigations that it, again, is very, very crucial that you actually look after yourself spiritually, so you're able to combat these entities. And the GoatMan, again, he really has his origins since the beginning of time with different ancient Greek, ancient Roman, I'm sure Samaria, Babylonian, but you really have to be, it's been twisted and manipulated into a thing of evil, and I really don't think its beginnings had anything to do with evil at all. I don't know what your take is on that.
What has to do with evil?
Well, that's just how society makes something out of nothing, or makes something good into evil to get rid of.
Well, let's understand. I think the GoatMan entity himself is an evil entity, because I mean, you look at the things that's happened in our life after we encountered him. He represented himself as Mr. M, which is the 13th letter of the alphabet. However, I don't think that Baphomet is the same thing as the GoatMan entity that we discovered. I think they're different. Especially if he's supposed to be the sabbatical goat, which is actually would be a good thing.
Right. And then I'm going to go into just, again, modern sightings of the GoatMan. And we've mentioned the GoatMan in Kentucky that is also known as the Popelic Monster. Again, part man, part goat, legendary creature that resides in the Popelic train trestle in Louisville, Kentucky. Also, the GoatMan in Maryland is an American legend of a part man, part goat cryptid, which originates in Maryland. In Texas, again, also known as the Lake Worth Monster, is an American legend of a part man, part goat, which originates in Lake Worth, Texas. There's also in Wisconsin a creature believed to live in and around Washington County in Washington, and also London, England, in Wimbleby border, London, England. There's an urban legend about a creature reputed to inhabit a tunnel taking the River Brent under the Metropolitan. So that's actually in London. In again, there is that Mr. McCartney, who is a U.S. traveler journeying with a wagon pulled by goats from Georgia. So really, there's been a lot of references and a lot of sightings.
Actually, we're giving you some of the stories of the GoatMan. If you read the book, you got a lot more, including people who have been killed by the GoatMan.
And again, you mentioned too about Denton, Texas, the bridge where they say a lot of the GoatMan sightings are equated with bridges. So Denton, Texas, we've never made it there, but they do a lot of advertising. It's called Old Alton Bridge, aka the Goatman's Bridge. And apparently, they do a lot of tours. A lot of people have gone there, and the GoatMan's actually been seen in Ireland as well. Zach Bagans did it, and Ghost Adventures crew did a story on him in Ireland, which supports my fact that he's a demonic entity. And this particular GoatMan of Denton, Texas, really, according to the most widely circulated version, it's an African-American entrepreneur named Oscar Washburn and his family that tended a farmstead goat herd near the bridge that was renowned for quality meat, milk, cheeses, and hides. And when he was, he is a proud businessman, he proudly hung a sign on the Old Alton Bridge directing this way to the GoatMan. And the legend says that it infuriated local Ku Klux Klan men who plotted violence. And on a dark night in the late 1930s, a lynch mob came and stormed his shack and dragged the GoatMan with their noose to the waiting bridge. So they actually tightened the rope around his neck and they hung him.
The Ku Klux Klan is a bunch of idiots, really. They don't need, they use any little excuse to kill any black person they can.
But that's the legend of the GoatMan, that actually the guy that was lynched on the bridge, Oscar Washburn, his vengeful spirit has been haunting the Old Alton Bridge ever since that lynching. And
I'd like to say this, a little bit off topic, but I'm from the South, I'm from Georgia, and I believe in Southern heritage and Southern pride. But I do not support the Ku Klux Klan or their methods or what they stand for. I don't do it. But if it's an organization that wants to support Southern pride and heritage, because we did have ancestors that did fight in wars, then by all means do it.
But this particular bridge in Denton, Texas, has a lot of stories that they say are bring forth the GoatMan. There's actually some people who have wild accusation that it's the work of Satanists who opened a porthole for the Hellspawn's demon. I mean, that's how wild the story is, and they get twisted and misconstrued as well. And another variation predates the bridge itself, and it's an account that may go back as the 1860s, and it's called the Texas Troubles. Some Copper Canyon cowboys lynched a Creole slave goat herder named Jack Kendall, and that's another version of why there's a goat-like entity haunting this particular bridge. And it's, that's, I think, legends are spawned by people, true accounts of people that are manipulated into these various myths. And what Timothy said in the beginning of this podcast, really you have to do your research. It's nice to read about mythical creatures and all these legends, but we have to be aware that not all these legends are factual and true. I mean, every legend begins with a seed or a grain of truth, and then it gets changed. It does get altered through the telling of this particular story. We all add its own twists and what have you. But really, you know, I was really attuned to write this book with our own accounter, so I thought it was I wanted to get our version out there, because, you know, you do a web search on the GoatMan, you have all these sightings all around the world and what people said it looks like, what they think it looks like, but until you encounter these things, I think it's very, very important, you know, for us to get our take out there on what we seen in this particular investigation.
Well, all the people that are talking about him, we're the only one with the video and photographic evidence, so I think we're the people you should listen to.
And, you know, hopefully, like I said, I may redo the book on the GoatMan or something like that, but I'm not quite sure. And, you know, we like to bring in all of our podcasts subjects that are, you know, that you may find interesting. Again, my book,
well, let's use proper terminology. When she talks about redoing, she's talking about a revision.
Right.
The GoatMan book out there right now is an awesome book. It'll be in the link below. Click on it and get your copy today. It's a very good story.
And I don't know if you have anything else that you want to touch on. Like I said, we're actually going to have like I said, we're going to have an exciting guest this coming weekend, so we look forward to that as well. And if there's any topics that you would like us to cover, please get in touch with us. Send us an email. And it's a very important, these podcasts, that you like, you share, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get the word out, and, you know.
Yeah, I got something I'd like to add. Yeah, we switched the subject a little bit. Exercise. America as a whole is filled with fat-ass people. And I can say that because I consider myself fat. So I'm exercising. I'm actually having a hard time catching my breath right now. And I support exercise. If you're having a hard time using the bathroom or flushing out your colon, forget fiber. The best thing that you can do is a pre-workout called Ghost, and it's a colon cleanser. It would clean you out.
But I think that goes back to our sedentary lifestyle now, that everything is on social media, everything's on computers. When was the last time that you actually seen kids playing outside without having a cell phone in their hand?
Well, not too long ago, about 3 weeks ago, we seen 2 kids on bicycles playing outside, and that was awesome. You know,
that was an oddity, because back in the day, I mean, before 11-year-old kids needed or demanded to have a cell phone, I mean, you actually had to play board games, ride your bike, go to the park, or even skateboard. Yeah. But now we've got people that play video games, and please don't misunderstand me. I'm not against video games, but when they consume your life, I have an older son that plays, you know, 8, 9, 10 hour marathons. I mean, every once in a while is fine, but when it becomes your life and fantasy comes into reality, there's a problem there. And there's a whole world to expand, and that's why we're writing books like crazy. Buy one of our big books. Expand your horizons.
Well, the GoatMan is written from a personal experience that we had on a location that we did. Again, it's on Amazon.com. It's The GoatMan by Alexandria Anthony. So it's on BarnesandNobles.com. It's on Amazon.com. I'll put the Amazon link in the description. Click on there and get it. It's got a lot of awesome stories that we didn't cover in this podcast. We're just giving you a little bit of overview here.
We're just telling you some historical references of the GoatMan, meaning Pan or Fawn or satire, other names that you were acute with that. And
but let's go back to getting kids to exercise and play outside more. To make a healthy environment again. This stuff I'm taking called Ghost, it makes your balls tingle if you take enough of it, and it cleans your colon out. It's a great product. I definitely recommend taking your fat ass into GNC and getting something to help motivate you watch YouTube videos, find somebody you like and watch their YouTube videos for exercise purposes, and get out there and get it done.
And I mean, we all like food. I mean, I like my food too, but I mean, you have to offset the calories that you intake with burning out the calories. I mean, go out for a walk, take your dog for a walk, walk to the store if it's in walking distance, breathe fresh air, and just get out there. And you know what? You're going to be pleasantly surprised on the things that you see. I mean, when was the last time you actually stood outside and listened to birds singing or looked at the shape of the clouds? I mean, these are things that don't cost anything. I'm sure a lot of you, well, what?
One of the things I want to get is a little puppy. But there's a little cat next door that's pissed off at us right now. And I think the reason he's pissed off now that I think about it is because it was raining that day and we didn't let him in.
Well, I heard a scratching at the door. We had just been, I don't even know if we were up, but I was just making coffee, I think, and I heard a scratching at the door, and I think he wanted to come in, and I didn't know what it was.
It's not our cat, first off, so it would be funny for us to put him inside. It's our neighbor's cat.
He's been inside here only because he's ran in the door here.
Yeah, he's ran in the door quite a few times, and when he runs in the door, he runs and jumps on the bed. And I have no objection to the cat being inside. It's just, it's not our cat. And, you know, but he seems to be pissed. Like, we went off and bought him toys, and he just looks at the toys and walks right past me now.
So, yeah, he seems to be in sort of a miffed mood, or he seems to be insulted by something. So he used to be best friends with Timothy now, and he seems to be
he would always jump on my lap, or if I'm standing up, he would always jump up to me and put his claws right into my chest and stomach and try to get me to hold him.
We thought you were a scratching post, so I mean,
yeah, whatever.
You would sit together. It was actually so cute to see both of them sitting together. He was like a little baby. He'd put his head backwards, and he'd fall asleep instantly on Timothy's lap, and then all of a sudden now he's just
pissed.
He just seems like he's got an attitude, and his shit doesn't stink. But here we go buy him some toys. But I mean, we've got the toys here if he's ready to be friends again, and we won't hold anything against him. And I feel sorry for him because he seems to be
the neighbor's never home, and the cat's always outside
looking for friends.
And we kind of wonder if the cat's even being fed or watered.
And we've tried to feed him, and we leave a little bowl of water out for him, so it does get hot here sometimes, so we do feel sorry for him, and we are animal lovers in this household, so like I said, yeah, we do feel sorry for him. But again, you know, we hope we've sort of given you a little bit of insight in regards to the GoatMan and this mythical creature and the legend of the GoatMan. Again, buy my book on Amazon. It's a very informative book. I do
Amazon's are Barnes and Nobles, and but I prefer you buy it from Amazon.
And we've sort of, my book tells you the history, the mythology, goes into the Knights Templar, goes into Bahamut, and then goes into the sightings on modern times, and then it goes into our particular encounter in room 118 here in Texas.
Yeah, and so I don't know how we get back on that subject, but yeah.
Well, we're just wrapping up our particular topic or on the GoatMan through beginnings of time and all that. So
you know what I find interesting, and maybe somebody out there listening to this can send us an email on it, is garlic makes me sick. Salt lamps make me sick. And I just found out, yesterday or the day before, that sage
incense
sage incense make me sick.
And we were sort of, he mentioned that to me, and I really never thought about that at all until he brought it to the forefront. And I figured, wow, okay, what does that really say? What do those things signify? Or what are they supposed to keep at bay? And I figured, okay, that's kind of weird.
And I have, during one of my investigations, had the eye color on my eyes turn black. So I have had demons come through my body, house in my body, and leave my body. But do I have one in me now? I don't know.
It's hard to say, but those particular items that he did mention are what keeps evil or keeps something demonic at bay. So I found...
And they all make me sick, which is very interesting.
And on that note, I think I wanted to wrap. I wanted to mention this to all of you as well, that you may have not known this, but the Lakewood Brewing Company actually makes a very dark lager beer called the GoatMan. So for all of you beer drinkers out there that you may not know, that there's a GoatMan beer out there, so check that out. So, you know, they've named it the GoatMan for a particular reason.
And I'd like to say this too, for people that use public restrooms, don't shit on the toilet seat. Don't piss on the toilet seat. If you're not man enough to piss in a urinal, which means that you probably have a little dick. So if you have a little dick and don't want nobody to see that you have a little dick, and so you want to piss inside a stall, then at least have the courtesy to pull the toilet paper down if you don't want to touch it with your hands, and lift up the seat. Let's make the world a better place and stop shitting and pissing on toilet seats.
Okay, well, I don't know if I can add too much on that, because I don't have the biological equipment to say if I have a small or a big one, but we have our own challenges as women, and I know the one pet peeve that Timothy has is where we're currently staying, there was a transient guest that it was a male that had pissed all over the toilet seat.
Yeah, I had just took a shower inside because we stay from different RV parks and stuff like that when we travel. And I just took a shower in one of the RV park showers, because the shower that we have in our RV is very small. I'm pretty big. I can't really turn around in it. And so I took a shower and I came out and we were doing laundry. And so I was sitting out. The only person that went in there was this grown man. He goes into the bathroom, and before the laundry's done, I had to go to the bathroom. So I go back into the bathroom. There's piss that hadn't been flushed. There's piss all over the toilet seat. And stuff like that just pisses me off, man. If you're too much of a prissy ass, little dick motherfucker, sit down and piss. Because you're already a prissy ass if you don't want to touch the toilet seat. Sit down and piss.
Okay, well, yeah, there's a lot of unclean, unsanitary people out there, and they figure, well, they don't have to clean it up, so I'll just make a mess and I'll just use the next toilet. But yeah, I find that very, very offensive as well, that these people, a lot of people too, don't even wash their hands after they use the restroom. Who knows what they touch all over the place, especially when they're preparing food. I know that every restaurant says all employees must wash their hands prior to leaving this restroom, but let's be truthful. How many people truly wash their hands because they're afraid to actually touch the sink knobs or touch the door again?
And let me ask you this, because we've all take shits, and I know that we're in kind of probably the gross category for a lot of you right now on this topic, but how many times have you used toilet paper and have your finger bust through and go up into the hole of your ass, and then you wipe, but then you do not wash your hands, and you're gonna have no food again?
That's why a lot of people, when you go to fast food places or whatever, they get sick. Yeah. You acute it to, oh, the food must be off, or my stomach is bubbling. You get the shits after you go eat at a hamburger place. But have you really thought of the case that maybe these employees, number one, are not wearing hair nets, and number two, they are not washing their hands after the restroom? And I mean, the food is off because you have feces and urine inside your food without even realizing. So I hope we didn't ruin anybody's appetite by talking, but these are real issues that we face each and every day, and society really is going downhill really, really fast in a lot of these issues. And it's a shame, because we're supposed to be advanced, technologically advanced and scientifically advanced, but I think in a lot of these mannerisms we are going backwards, and people are becoming more animal than humans. Tell
people about the Etsy store.
And again, please drop into our new Etsy store. It's called Macabre Needful Things. We're very pleased to have, we currently have items up. We will be adding more items as the time, as we have time. We're going to be having another investigation coming up very, very shortly. We'll keep you in the loop of that. But we have an awesome red brig dust pendant on a black leather rope. Very, very beautiful at a price point of only $20. It's really a giveaway. We have Timothy's book, The Ed Gein Story, on there for $7. And we also have red brig dust in a beautiful glass mason jar for $25. It's our special spiritually formulated mixture that goes through a lot of ritualistic spiritual processes at $25. So please support our Etsy indie store, macabre, needful things, and we'd really appreciate it. And more products to come in the next few days. Stay tuned as well.
And I guess she's been trying to wrap it up for a while now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. That's it for now.
Stay tuned. We'll be having a special guest on the weekend podcast.
Do not miss Sunday's show.
You'd be pleasantly surprised. And again, take care. Have a great day, folks.
Pretty popular medium going to be on Sunday's show.
Catch it.